There's the Mount of Olives, so straight ahead. Shows the city of David and the first temple along the Temple of the Mount. And then Gethsemane there by the Golden Church down in there, and then all the graveyards that are waiting to repent. Let's see, there was a story about Jeremiah 14.
The former city of David. Okay? City of David and the Pool of Siloam. We want to be able to line up with the Pool of Siloam because we're going to look at a street, an open-air first-century street that was possibly used to bring Jesus to the house of Caiaphas. It's called Silwan in Arabic, meaning Siloam or Shiloah in Hebrew. And so this is the neighborhood of Silwan.
Was the pool inside the city of David?
The pool was inside the city of David. The wall came right down and included the pool, and then it came around and sort of came up the hill. So there was if you remember the model that we saw over at the Israel Museum, you saw that there was a lot of wall that came down, and then it followed right along by the Hinnom Valley. Okay, so there we have also, this is the Mount of Scandal that I mentioned yesterday and said that we couldn't see it from our vantage point at Dominus Flavi. Well, here it is directly across, and so this is where Solomon was parking all of his pagan wives. And the palace, of course, right over there where the people are standing on the tower looking out by that green slope that comes off the road. Okay?
So
You don't see it.
I do see it. Never mind.
Okay, you see a green slope
I do see it.
with some big trees kind of on the slope, kind of on the other side. And then there's a tower in front of it, and there are people on it.
People, yeah.
Okay, so they are right there overlooking the palace area. And so Solomon would be living there. And then beyond that, he had his administration buildings, which we call the Ophel. And they're actually digging for those now over in the area of the southern steps. So that was like, and then beyond the Ophel, then you had the Temple Mount of the time of Solomon, which was much smaller, and then the temple, of course, was up there where the Dome of the Rock is. So that was Mount Zion and the sides of the north, the city of the great king in Psalm 48. Okay, the city of David extended from the Ophel, the south part of the Temple Mount, where the steps are, all the way down to the Pool of Siloam. The border of it was this street right here, which was a valley. That was a valley in that time that's been filled in since. And then when the city expanded, it went up the hill into the Jewish quarter. And that quarter was called the Mishneh. And that's where Huldah the prophetess was living. That's in the account of King Josiah. That's go all the way to 2nd Chronicles and chapter 36, 34, 35, 36. Represents that, the cock crowing. And of course, you know the story. After Jesus was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, they brought him probably surreptitiously and quietly. The arrest party, the soldiers of the high priest, brought him probably down the Kidron Valley and probably through the water gate at the Pool of Siloam. And they have discovered the first century street that goes up the hill that connects with this part right here. So the stairs that you see here, they're not just stairs. This is a real first century street. And now the question is, and we can't say for sure, but this has been the site for the House of Caiaphas from probably the early Byzantine period, and this is a classic Byzantine site. But they did get it right by having this street right here, because we can picture Jesus being taken to the house of the high priest and having to come up into the upper city, and so we are pretty much right in line with the upper city. Probably we're a little bit, probably the lower part of the upper city. Wouldn't you say we're lower part of the upper? So let's assume, let's say that this is the house of Caiaphas. Kathleen Kenyon, who dug down in Jericho, she was the one who determined that this was the house of Caiaphas. And so since that time that she made that determination, everybody seems to be on board that. However, of course, there's always the possibility of questioning it. And I don't think anybody's really done a thorough job of thinking about that. I mean, I haven't read any documentation, but of other opinions. Have you?
I can't resist a comment about the authenticity of this site. And I do respect very much the piety, the neat place this is to come and to tell the story. But if Pamela's 1 to 10, I'm in negative numbers already on this one. And I'll tell you what, it's inconceivable to me that the high priest would live here. You can see the Golden Dome from here, right? Just barely. But this is the high priest. This is the high priest. Where would he live? Almost certainly where he can look down and see the sacred square there, the platform. So his home is up there in the high rent district. This is low rent. Oh, I can't imagine high priest being down here. So anyway, if you go with me tomorrow to the burnt room in that area, that's where Nachman Avigad found a very nice, wealthy, upper-class neighborhood. I'm confident the high priest was one of the residents up there. But anyway, that shouldn't detract from the...
That big house, the mansion.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good candidate.
Yeah. So we'll get a look at that later. Let's read the story. Remember, we were in the Garden of Gethsemane. Judas shows up, the traitor, the guy who knows the place, who guides the police there, and we have the arrest. Then we have this. Then seizing him, that is Jesus, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. But when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtroom and had sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, "This man was with him." You know, folks in the Middle East can tell at a distance, just by your dress, your gait, your demeanor, what nationality you are. You were all spotted immediately as Americans, long before you realized that that was the case. They just know. So this is just part of Middle Eastern culture, is you know who's who, and this gal knew that he was not a Judean, he was a Galilean. She looked closely at him and said, "This man was with him," but he denied it. "Woman, I don't know him," he said. A little later, someone else saw him and said, "You also are one of them." "Man, I am not," Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted, "Certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean." Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. Remember, the master had already told Peter what was going to come down. And at the time, Peter said, "Lord, I'll die with you." Yeah, I'll die with you. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him. before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. And so you will see here that this is the prison. That, you know, it's a place that can represent and help us visualize the treatment, the mistreatment that was handed out. They blindfolded him and demanded, "Prophesy. Who hit you?" And they said many other insulting things to him. And then at daybreak, we have this council meeting of the elders. And, well, let me just read that. The chief priests are there, the teachers of the law. Jesus was led before them. "If you are the Christ," they said, "tell us." Jesus answered, "If I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I asked you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God." They all asked, "Are you then the Son of God?" He replied, "You were right in saying, I am." Then they said, "Why do we need any more testimony? We have heard it from his own lips." And thus, he is guilty of blasphemy on religious grounds. But of course, that's not going to play well with the Roman government. And so what we will have is the charge will be taken to the government, to Pilate, and this man will be seen as a terrorist, as a leader of a messianic revolt movement. And this is treason against Rome. That's a capital offense. And of course, that will be what Jesus is condemned on, being the leader of a revolt against mighty Rome. Well, the Son of Man is going to be enthroned. Caesar is nothing but a memory. Rome has disappeared from the stage of history, and the kingdom of God is thriving quite nicely. Quite nicely.